Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our fourth edition of 3 and 30. Tonight, we are here with our guest, Mr. Randy Lozier. Welcome, Randy. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we are running a new platform here, so we're having a little technical difficulties, but hopefully everyone here can find a link and find some time and get some good takeaways here tonight with Randy. So, Randy, let's just start off with the story. You've been an official for a long time, started when you're 15. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So it actually started, I was at St. Alexander's, which doesn't even exist anymore in Morrisonville, right across from the fairgrounds. And I got hurt in gym class. And as crazy as that sounds, I got hurt in gym class, and I still wanted to go outside with everybody, with all my friends. I don't want to be cooped up inside. So when I got out there, and my phys ed teacher, Mrs. Canning, said, "You can go referee." So it was kickball. So I was calling outs and everything else, and I was making mistakes left and right. Everybody was mad at me. I sat by myself at lunch the next day. It wasn't pretty. But that is just the little dichotomy of what I actually have done as an official throughout the year. So yeah, I started out just doing something where I hurt myself, and I was at St. Alexander's. And then in high school, I ended up keeping the clock, and I reffed a couple scrimmages and whatnot, and it was kind of fun. And then when I was at 16, and then you had to be 17 back then to be an official. So at 17 years old, I signed up for high school soccer, and Stan Riggs took me in and told me and said, "All right, we're going to make an official out of you." I said, "Okay." So I started out as an official at 17 doing modified games, and I ended up actually being a varsity coach the following year. So I was doing both, and the Randy Lozier of 2021 would say, "You probably had too many irons in the fire at the time and should have stuck to just one." But I did. I did both. And I ended up officiating basketball in the winter, and it only took me a couple years, and I ended up officiating college, both basketball and soccer, which I still do to this day. I actually got to officiate a college conference championship before I got a high school sectional championship. So it was a lot of fun, and it was a good way to make a little extra money. It was a good way to get a little bit of exercise, have a little fun, and socialize. So yeah, I started out 15 years old for actually getting paid with the Youth Bureau at Clinton County, and then I was doing high school at 17, and here I am today.
That's great, Randy. Thanks for sharing that. Trying to go back and forth between Randy and I here. So, Randy, one thing I think that is important for high school athletes to think about is we all have a big passion for sports, and as little kids we all want to grow up and be professional baseball players. We want to, that's always a dream, but I think it's important. Another avenue could be you may not be professional baseball player, but you can be a professional official. And just tell us a little bit about how that process worked for you.
Absolutely. So I started doing high school for a couple of years, and as I was doing that, I wanted to get better. And we had a little bit of clinics in our area, but I wanted to do more. So I went down to Syracuse and actually tried out down there for collegiate officiating. And then when I started doing Division III in JUCO for a couple of years, I got an invite to go to a Division II camp. I did the Division II camp and really liked it. So then I started saying, well, all right, what else can I do? In 2001, in the summer of 2001, I actually got to join the Harlem Globetrotters and the Harlem Ambassadors. I tried out for both. And we were in Susquehanna Valley, Pennsylvania. I'll never forget that. And my mother thought I was crazy to drive all the way down to try out for the Harlem Ambassadors. My grandfather had good foresight. He said, "You're just crazy enough to do it." And of course I did. I ended up making it. I did about 15, 20 shows around the Northeast. And then they had a small break from July, I want to say like July 15th to October 10th. And or October, I think it was October 9th actually, because October 10th I was going to go to Reykjavik, Iceland, and start my tour over there. And of course, sadly, the events of 9/11 happened, and we ended up canceling the tour. They ended up canceling the tour, and I didn't get to go. But I ended up, they came to Lake Placid, and I ended up doing a show out on Lake Placid. My good friend Jeff Potter reunited me with some of my people that I met from back in 2001. And then I also did a couple more events. I did one down Madison Square Garden, and I did another one in the Boston area. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, you can. There's people from this area. Jamie Lucky is probably the most well-known in this area for being a Division I official. And he's done Final Fours, and he's from right here, right in the Ogdensburg area. He actually made it all the way. So he moved out of the area, went down in North Carolina, and he had a couple of clinics up here the last couple of years before COVID. And I was very lucky and honored that he offered to have a position on his staff for me to help evaluate and help officials that want to go to the next level.
So Randy, is it safe to say that to be an official, you know, even officiating youth sports is a good start, and then you work your way up to high school, and these professional officials that we see on ESPN, whether it's college or professional sports, they all paid their dues at youth and or high school levels?
95% of them, Matt, do. There's the rare occasion, the Mike Stevens out of there, the Boston area. Mike was doing rec league. And in Boston, there's a lot of rec leagues to do. And he had never done a youth game before. He had never done high school or college. And a guy picked him up and said, hey, you know, I think you do a really good job. Why don't you come with me and see if it works? He went to a camp, and all of a sudden, in 2 years, he was fast-tracked from the ECAC and went straight into Division I, and now he's doing Final Fours and state and national championship games. So, you know, when you talk about the youth levels, right about $15-20 for a youth level game right now. And some of the guys that are doing Division I, that's their prime job. Some of them, their actual prime job is to be a Division I official. They're doing 100 to 120 games a year, and they're making somewhere in the realm of $150,000 to $200,000 as a referee. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is, it can be quite lucrative. So before we get going too much, Randy, can you hit us with your first takeaway that you have for us?
Absolutely. My first takeaway, and when we're talking about these, what takeaways are for some people who haven't chimed in before and tuned into us, is that we want to get 3 takeaways, especially for student athletes in our area. What's one of your takeaways? And one of mine that I always stress to the people that I coach is control what you can control. There are so many factors that you can't control. You can't control the weather. You can't control what defense the other team throws at you. There's going to be a lot of adversities, but there are things you can control. You can control effort. Nobody else controls your effort. You can control your attitude, how you react to situations. You can control that. You can control your diet, what you eat. All those things you can control. And in a world that we can't control a lot of things, and this is a prime example in our pandemic area, a lot of things we can't control. The things you can control them. And the things you can't control, work through them and work through adversity.
So Randy, one of the things you talked about was controlling your attitude. And I think most people that have seen you on the sidelines, seen you at a soccer or basketball game, see that smile on your face. And can you just give us like some tips in terms of controlling the game, in terms of dealing with frustrated fans or frustrated coaches?
We'll talk about it from a couple aspects, Matt. The first aspect, as a coach, some people will say that I'm a smiling, happy-go-lucky guy, and they laugh when they see me coach. And then there's other people that say he's crazy. You know, something's wrong with him. He's intense. Well, the thing is when your kids show up to your practice and you're a coach, in my opinion, they will take on your persona. So if you have the up high energy and you have the smile on your face and you know it's going to be a good day, you're going to you're going to relate to those kids. We're going to have fun today. We're going to learn today. We're going to do a lot of great things. And I really believe that it does pass off to those kids. So when they actually come to practice, they're ready to go. And when fans sometimes see me, they're going, he's a little crazy. But the thing is you have invested a lot of time. You do a lot of things with these kids, and you want to make it work. So as one of these athletes that is watching tonight, I would definitely say to you, come with full energy. Come with the energy, with a smile, and I can do it attitude.
Great. So Randy, while we're on the subject of coaching, tell us a little bit about the various sports you've coached, the various levels you've coached. You also are commissioner of the CVBL. You run the Plattsburgh Baseball Club. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So one of my longtime friends that I met back in the late 80s, early 90s, Jeff Benjamin. Jeff Benjamin was one of those guys who had the smile on his face, always looking out for people in their best interest. He would give people stuff that he really didn't have to give. He was someone that was a true inspiration to me, and he actually got me into trying to coach a little bit more than what I was doing. When I was a senior in high school, I actually helped coach the varsity softball team with Tom Brandell. And this year I had Tom Brandell's son with me on JV soccer. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, it started there. And then I started to move up a little bit. I was coaching varsity soccer at 18 years old. I was probably a little too young to be doing that, but a lot of great memories. Then I start moving into the part of, I was the varsity baseball coach at AuSable. Then from that point, I started going into Plattsburgh State. I ended up coaching at Plattsburgh State, where we got some really good honors. We got to host for the first time ever for softball. As an assistant softball coach, we were 3 years in a row. We were the NFCA Coaching Staff of the Year at Plattsburgh State for the 3 years that I was there. From that point, we ended up getting fourth in the nation with Plattsburgh State. I believe that in 2006, we had 41 wins, which I think still stands today. And then from that, I was coaching in Babe Ruth, and I got a call from one of my former players who was coaching in the league and said, hey, listen, we need some help running this league. Would you want to get back into it from the Plattsburgh Babe Ruth side? And I said, I got a lot of stuff on my plate, but if I can help out, let's see if I can help out. Long story short, that was in 2006, 2007, and now 13, 14 seasons later, I am the president of the Plattsburgh Baseball Club, which was normally known as the Plattsburgh Babe Ruth. Since that time, in the last 8 years, I've taken over the CVBL as commissioner. So that is something that I hold pretty high, because this past year was trying. And being a high school soccer coach, being a former volleyball coach, being a former softball coach, and actually current softball coach, some of my best memories honestly are with people and with teams that I've coached. And I can honestly tell you that I wouldn't change it for anything.
So speaking of coaching and officiating, what has been the biggest difference in terms of coaching and officiating pre-pandemic and then currently in the pandemic?
It's the fluidity. I'll have to check that word. I think it's a George Bush word, but the fluidity of everything that's going on, the change. Everything's changing so quickly. You have to wear a mask and you have to sanitize. Okay, now you have to sanitize and you have to wear gloves. Okay, now we don't want to wear gloves. We just want to sanitize. And you're trying to keep the kids safe. You want them to have a great experience, but you want to keep them safe. You don't want to be known as the person that caused 20, 30 people to end up having COVID or having issues. So that, number one, the safety aspect is far and away the forefront in my mind. With that said, I do think that there are some people hard to the left and there's some people hard to the right, but we got to find that balance. And I really believe that I tell everybody that's either on the left or the right or in the middle, what's our prime goal? And if our prime goal is to get kids to play, then we should absolutely be doing what the authorities tell us to do and the people that are smarter than us. And sometimes we don't understand. How come this sport can have athletes participating, but yet we can't have this sport? How come we can have spectators at the youth sports, but we can't have them here? The bottom line is that things are so fluid. And, you know, I think today, sadly, we hit 500,000 people that have passed from COVID. And, you know, too many have passed. That's 500,000 too many. And you don't want to be the reason why that something is spread. But on the same token, you want to get these kids out here and you want to make sure they have a great experience. So safety is absolutely the number one thing, Matt, that we have to pay attention to. And, you know, I think sometimes people go maybe a little bit farther than they need to. But then again, when you say you've gone too far, I'd rather go too far than not enough. So definitely the safety is the biggest aspect. Kids in themselves, they've been cooped up inside a lot. You know, a lot of kids have been cooped up inside. So when they come to the field, if your head's down and you're moping and you're like, geez, you know, no, you can't do that. When the kids are there, like, hey, it's great to see you. And it is great to see them. Let them know that. There's nothing wrong with that. And ask them how they've been. It's probably the first time that someone's had interaction with them and they're ecstatic to have it. So I really, truly believe that safety is the first issue, but you got to come with some high energy. Let these kids know you're there for them and that you're willing to talk anytime for them. That's the big difference between before and after.
Yeah, that's great, Randy. Thank you for that. So while we're going here, before we get going too far, hit us with your second takeaway.
Sure. The second takeaway I have is respect. And it's respect in all levels. Respect the game. And what I mean by that is we don't make a mockery of the game. We're going to respect your coach. And whether that's an assistant coach, whether that's the third assistant, the scorekeeper, if they're part of your team, you're respecting all coaches and support staff. And then you start talking about your teammates. Listen, not everybody's going to be a superstar, okay? Not everybody can be a Matt Wallentuck, you know, from the Alex Bay area and a star athlete. But even if there's somebody that maybe doesn't doing things the right way, or maybe they don't have the athletic ability that you do, you can easily respect them and help them out. You talk about even equipment, you know, your jersey. Take pride in your jersey. Take pride in the ability and the opportunity to actually be on this team. And of course, you know, obviously I have to say you have to respect the officials. Because without officials, it's pretty hard to have a game. So respect is my big issue and my number two for the 3 and 30.
Yeah, that's such an important part, Randy, about the respect piece and you know, I think one of the things that growing up in the North Country. In a small town, you mentioned Alex Bay, and even it's very similar to the Section 7 schools up here. Looking back, I didn't realize how lucky I had it to be able to play 3 sports that I wanted to play, whereas you get to college and you talk to friends that you play pickup basketball with them and they're better than you, and they didn't even you know, get close to making the modified team at their big universities. So that's the one thing, and it's easy for us to sit back and say, oh, you know, I miss the glory days, but that, you know, the respect thing, take advantage of it while you have it.
Absolutely.
As we're going along here, and we're doing well, Randy. I don't know if you want to hit your third takeaway, or you want to hit us with just talking about your assigner duties. That's a new responsibility you've kind of taken on for the section, and just kind of give us a little glimpse of what it takes to be the assigner of officials.
Well, first off, it's an honor. Truthfully, it really is, because this is a position I think that's been long overdue. Pretty much all places around the nation have a similar role that I have. We're one of the last ones to get it, and I think that the Athletic Council, yourself, and all of Section 7 realizing this is a position that was needed. I think it's a true niche for me. It's right down my alley. I love interacting with people, but what do I actually do? You know that, and I'm sure there's a lot of people with that question. What exactly do you do? First off, we're trying to make sure that every one of our organizations are compliant with New York State Public High School Athletic Association and the 5-point program. So the 5-point program basically says, listen, you got to make sure that they pay dues. You got to make sure that they're doing the right things on the court. You got to make sure that they read the rule book. All those things that inquire to make sure that we're doing things properly and we're doing them just like everybody else is doing. So the people that are in Buffalo should know the same rules, the same mechanics as the people in Plattsburgh or in Albany. And from that point, now I'll take, it's a lot of communication. It's a lot of effective communication with athletic directors, with officials, with coaches. And I truly believe that's one of my strong points is the communication aspect. You have to know how to talk to coaches. You have to know when to say no. You have to know, say, okay, I made a mistake. We're going to move on. And I think in this position, it's the same way. But now technology is a huge aspect. By far, it's a huge aspect. So now it's learning new software. So if you didn't have a hard enough job and add the pandemic in, if that wasn't enough, we're going to learn new software now too. All right. Whatever you throw at me, we're going to do my best with. So now we assign on what's called RefView, which is through our school. It actually eliminates a lot of chance for mistakes between other software because all the schools utilize our school and they have the ability to just absolutely promote all their games. They have the opportunity to directly give me when they add a game, when they change a game. It's great for communication to let you know if there's a game canceled, especially when, in the snow in the North Country. If you don't like the weather in the North Country, they say wait 5 minutes, it'll change. But if a game gets changed, instantly it communicates with the officials so they don't start in their way. From that point, I'll be out and I'll be observing a lot of facilities in the area, making sure that they're compliant with our COVID rules too, because even though we have a rule book, we still have a contract to fulfill. And more importantly, we have a moral obligation and ethical violation, to make sure that we're doing what's proper and what's safe for the kids. So I'll be floating around, obviously with a mask on, and I'm already vaccinated and we're going on the 10-day mark. And doing everything that I can do to make sure that these kids have a good experience.
That's great. And Randy, I have one more. Well, I think a 3-part question for you before we get into your third takeaway.
Sure.
And this kind of came along as you're talking. And my question for you is, being and seeing the different gears that are in motion in terms of athletics, what do you think right now moving forward are the biggest challenges that you face as a coach or as a coach, biggest challenges for officials, and then we'll top it off with what do you think the biggest challenge for student athletes are right now and moving forward?
I really believe change, and I'm going to use that word again tonight, Matt, because the biggest aspect is the change. Things are changing daily. Today, for example, whenever there's a change made to the schedule, I get an automatic email generated to me. Today, I'm over 400 emails just today. So all the change that is, think about how many families that affect. If you have just one game change on a night, so let's say that Beatmantown is heading to Saranac tonight, and for whatever reason that game gets canceled. So you have a modified, a JV, and a varsity. That's 6 teams. Now, how many kids are on a team? Let's just say there's 10. So that's 60. So if you figure there's 2 parents and maybe let's say a grandparent or 2, we're talking 240 people that affects immediately. Now you start talking about the custodians, the clock keeper, the timekeeper. Now you're talking about officials. Now we're talking about 300 people, possibly for one event. Now that changes a lot. Now you start talking about coaches. You have that to deal with. Kids have bad days. Coaches have bad days. Officials have bad days. You just hope that all 3 don't have a bad day on the same day. But with that said, change is obviously the most important. Some of the things that these kids are facing, their home life, you don't know what somebody else is behind closed doors. You don't know how other kids' home lives are. You don't know what's going on. And for a lot of kids, this outlet is what they need. And when things are prolonged or delayed, kids don't always understand right away, so it could be confusing to them. And listen, I'll be honest with you, things are confusing to me sometimes because there's been a lot of change. But when you talk about that, I think change is the most, and adversity. And kids sometimes have a hard time changing adversity. I know sometimes as a coach, I have problems with adversity.
So now that we're at the 25-minute mark, Randy, why don't you hit us with our third takeaway? So to recap, your first takeaway was control what you can control. Your second one was
respect.
And now
all aspects.
Let's go with your third takeaway.
Well, the third takeaway is don't be afraid to fail. And I think this is something that happens way too often with high school athletes. They're worried about if they fail, they're going to let down their father. They're going to let down their mother. They're going to let down Grandpa Joe. Aunt Alice came in from 40 miles away to watch them, and they don't want to fail. They don't want to try out for a team because they know that 8 kids have already played on that team for 2 years, and it's going to be awful hard to get in there. Don't be afraid to fail. I think Michael Jordan's probably the best aspect of that. He got cut from his freshman year from the basketball team, and look what he's done with his life, and look at the legend he has. There's hundreds of more I can go through, but with about 3 minutes left, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to go out for that team. Don't be afraid to take that shot. And of course, if someone else is open, that's fine. But if you're open, take the shot. What was the famous quote? You're going to miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I truly believe that. So don't be afraid to fail. We all fail in some aspect. And if you see a teammate that's not doing well, then we're going to go back to number 2. And you're going to go and you're going to help that teammate. And you're going to get them and you're going to pick them up. And whether you're the right fielder, the star pitcher, the shortstop, or the guy on the sidelines, be the best teammate you can be. And don't be afraid to fail in that role. Whatever your role may be, don't be afraid to fail in that role. You're going to have a lot of fun, and I guarantee the things you remember later in life are going to be the times that you had in athletics.
That is so true, Randy. That is I've heard the acronym FAIL stands for first attempt in learning.
Absolutely.
That's so important, and as we are progressing, especially now, we're hopefully seeing that light at the end of the tunnel with the pandemic and coming to an end, and we're seeing some basketball, some ice hockey games on the schedule. But we also got to understand that at any second, this whole thing can just poof, it can be gone. So it's so important to take advantage of the opportunities that we are given, and then control what we can control. And I think that the one thing I will say here is we had some technical difficulties. Joey LaFranca is typically our interviewer, and I'm on here. We
missed Joey tonight. We definitely missed Joey.
And Joey does a great job with this, and this is a little nerve-wracking. But the one thing I just, while I have a little bit of the floor here, is going back to your first point, the student athletes, what you do outside of school, what you do on the weekends, not only affects yourself, but it affects all of your classmates, and especially affects all your teammates. And it even affects the officials on the court. And we all know what a quarantine can do, knock us out for 2 weeks, and people are trying to make a living, and a lot of the officials are doing so as well. So I'll concede the floor here with you, Randy, if you want to kind of wrap it up with just some final thoughts that you have going forward.
Sure. I'd be remiss if I didn't say a couple things while we had it here. One, I've been in 5 weddings, and I've been attending probably 50 more of former student athletes that I've either coached or been with in some sort, in some aspect. I'm going to tell you that I'd be remiss in telling you that I am the godparent of one of my former players' kids. I would be remiss in telling you that some of the best times I ever had are in athletics, and don't waste the time that you have. I'd be remiss in telling you that At one point in time, Rob McAuliffe and I each had 2 state championships. Since then, Rob's gone ahead by 1, 2, or 10 more than I do. But, you know, Brockway Mechanical, I would be remiss in telling you that the Falcons teams that I had, I'd be remiss in telling you that this is great community support that we have in Clinton County. And finally, I'll tell you that I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that enjoy every second of your athletic career in high school. Enjoy every minute of every game, whether you win or lose. And trust me, I don't like to lose, but you do learn things in losses. And I will tell you that, you know, control the things you can control, respect all levels, and don't be afraid to fail.
That's great, Randy, and thank you for taking the time tonight with you know, giving us our 30 minutes of insights into the mind of arguably one of the most famous officials in Section 7 and longest serving, because you started so early. So thanks again, Randy, and thanks everybody for coming in and tuning into this 3 and 30 episode. And we hope to see you next week at 7 o'clock. Thank you.
Good night.
You still there, Randy?